Let's make an introduction to probability. This is a small summary of what we will cover on chapter 8. Very important, we have to find the probability of events by using the addition rule, the multiplication rule, as well as the conditional probability of an event. Probability is a numerical measure of the likelihood that the event is going to happen. You cannot have a probability greater than 1, you cannot have a probability with a negative number. That means the probability takes values between 0 and 1. If the probability is very close to 0, that means that the event is very unlikely to happen. And close to 1, that indicates that the event most likely is going to happen. Experiment is any process that generates well-defined outcomes. For example, when you roll a die, this is going to be an experiment, or when you pick up a card from a deck of cards. The sample space for an experiment is the set of all experimental outcomes. So when you roll a die, the sample space will be from 1 until 6. These are the possible outcomes. When you toss a coin, it could be heads and tails. A sample point is an element of the sample space, any one particular experimental outcome. So this is an example. When we select a card from a deck of cards, we have 52 cards. We have 4 aces, 4 twos, and so on. At the end we have 4 kings and 4 queens. We have 13 clubs, 13 spades, 13 hearts, and 13 diamonds, and we have 26 red and 26 black cards. An example of a simple event is that the chosen card is 2 of clubs, or another example could be an ace diamond. Now, a simple event is an outcome from a sample space with one characteristic. For example, a red card from a deck of cards, or could be a diamond, or could be an ace, but you need to have one characteristic. Complement of an event, all outcomes that are not part of event A, for example, all cards that are not diamonds, or all cards that are not aces. In this case you have 48 cards that are not aces, you have 39 cards, 52 minus 13, that are not diamonds. A joint event involves 2 or more characteristics at the same time. An ace that is also red from a deck of cards, or a 4 black card, and so on. You can assign probabilities by using any of these 3 methods. The first one is known as the classical method, where you assign probabilities based on the assumption of the equally likely events. The relative frequency method, which is based on historical data, and the subjective method, which is based on someone's judgment or opinion. Classical method. In this method you could assign a probability of 1 over n for every outcome. When you roll a die, for example, you have a probability of 1 over 6 to have a 3, 1 over 6 to have a 2, and so on. So this is the experiment, this is the sample space, and this is the probability. For the relative frequency, you have to find data from previous records. So in this example we have the number of polishers rented for the last 40 days. So that means 4 days it was 0, 6 days 1, and so on. So what you have to do, you have to calculate the relative frequency, meaning you have to divide 4 over 40. Why 40? 40 is the summation. So this is 0.1. 6 over 40, 0.15, 80 over 40, and so on. So you create the probabilities. So this is based on historical data, based on some records. Next one, we have a second example where we have the manager of a record store has kept track of the number of CDs for a specific title sold per day. That means you may have an 8% probability not to sell any of them, 17 to sell 1, 26% sell 2, and so on. So based on this data, let's go to see the following questions. Define the experiment. So what is the sample space? the sample space is going to go from 0 to 5. What is the probability that the number of CDs sold is greater than 3? Let me go back. Greater than 3 means 4 and 5. As you can see, 18% for 4, 10% for 5, so you have to add the two of them. So the correct answer is 28% or 0.28. What is the probability of exactly selling 5 of them? So this is 10% or 0.1. What is the probability to sell between 1 and 5 inclusive? Inclusive means that you have to include 1 and 5. So what you have to do is that you have to add the 5 probabilities. So 17 plus 26 is 43, 64, 82, 92. So the answer is 0.92 to sell between 1 and 5 inclusive. And what is the probability to sell 6 of them? Based on the past data, the probability will be 0. It goes up to 5. And these are going to be the answers on the next slide. Subjective method. This is based on someone's opinion, even though the best probability estimates often are obtained by combining the estimates from the classical or relative frequency method with the subjective method. And you have to follow these two rules to have a probability model. These two rules say that the probability of an event E has to be between 0 and 1 inclusive. So basically rule 1 states that the probabilities cannot be negative or greater than 1, and then the summation of probabilities has to be equal to 1. As soon as you follow these two rules, then you have a probability model. Or if they ask you if this is a probability model, you have to check these two rules.